Thank you for that warm introduction, and I'm excited to speak to you all today. Everyone came here today to learn about the first step to securing your business from a ransomware attack, from a cybersecurity attack. And I'm excited to talk to you about that today. We do have Tom Kirkham on here today, and he's going to touch in on some of the risk management aspects as well as a few other things as we go along. But before we get started, I do have a question, and it is, when was the last time you performed a security and risk assessment on your business? Now, this is a poll. The options should pop up here. So we have never, within the last year, past 2 to 5 years, or I'm not too sure. I don't know. Right. I see some answers coming in. 25% never. Another 25% within the last year. 50% not sure. That's interesting. Also, while you're entering the poll, Tom did put in the chat, if you do have any questions, make sure just to drop that question in the chat, and we'll try and answer it at the end. We do have a lot to go through here. All right. Yeah, well, that's pretty interesting. So we'll go ahead and get started. We have a lot of content to get through today. But first, what is the first step at securing your business from a ransomware attack, from a cybersecurity attack, or from a cyber attack? And that is a cybersecurity risk assessment. You have to understand your vulnerabilities first, of course, to put the proper security controls in place to protect them. You have to understand your vulnerabilities and the risks associated with them. And so cybersecurity risk assessment is essential. It's crucial to understanding those vulnerabilities. Today, we're going to talk about the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Most of you may have heard of NIST, but NIST stands for the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And it's basically a basis that everyone's using to, of course, understand their risk, assess their organization and the vulnerabilities associated. But this framework was created by the government for all organizations, small, medium-sized, large, to understand, manage, and reduce their cybersecurity risk. And we talk about why is this so important? Well, why do we need cybersecurity? Why do we need to understand our risks? And the main thing, it's to keep your doors open, to keep your business up and running, because cyber attacks, they're becoming one of the #1 reasons for organizations to go out of business. Studies show that 60% of small to medium size going into large businesses go out of business after a successful cyber attack. So you have less than the chance of a flip of a coin to stay in business after a cyber attack. And as a business owner, as an employee, as a CEO, your main focus is to protect all stakeholders. And Tom, I know that's a subject that you've been talking on briefly, protecting all stakeholders, understanding the risk, and really managing the risk from an owner's standpoint, from a leader's standpoint.
Yeah, it's the very livelihood of the people that work there. I mean, you're responsible for their income. You're responsible to protect your client and your customer data. You're responsible for making sure you have business continuity. Disaster recovery, recovering from a ransomware attack. And when you really get down to it, that's the #1 objective, to not only protecting all of those stakeholders, and the livelihoods and on and on and on, but it should be the primary objective. It should increase your cybersecurity defensive posture. Should not be a function of IT. IT should be a function of cybersecurity.
No. And that's what we're seeing now. Of course, we've all just relied on IT, and now you're seeing the need for IT and information security specialists, and them working together to protect your organization, to protect those stakeholders. But we'll jump right in, and we're going to learn a little bit about the NIST framework in the 5 core areas And if you follow these 5 core areas, this is what you should expect from a information security team, to have all 5 of these areas covered. But if you follow these in order, this is the best way to, one, first identify what needs to be protected, where your vulnerabilities are, and then security controls in place, and follow this, and you should be you should have the best defense to defend against a cyber attack. But first, we're going to talk about the first core area in the NIST framework is identify. You have to know what to protect before just throwing security tools at your business. Of course, we've relied on multiple different antivirus, things like that, because that's just what people say you need. But now we have to take a more strategic approach to cybersecurity, because of course, cyber threats are adapting, they're changing. And so we have to as well. And so the first thing you have to do is take the assessment and understand where you're vulnerable. But another thing you have to do is understand what's at risk. And so when we think of a cyber attack, we think of downtime, reputation, information. But when you think of downtime, you break it down even simpler. How much would a day cost you being down? How much would a week? How much would 2 weeks, a month? You have to think realistically of the actual cost of a cyber attack, just besides the ransom, besides getting new devices, or besides cleanup. There's a lot more at risk than just paying the ransom. So you have your downtime, you have your overall reputation. In business, of course, trust, they say, takes years to build, but can be lost in seconds. Business revolves around trust. And so if you have a cyber attack and all the stakeholders' confidential information that you're protecting, that they're trusting you with, is gone in seconds, just because someone, possibly your assistant, may have clicked on a link, or you may have clicked on a link, and now your network is infected with ransomware. All that trust you've been building over the past years is gone in seconds, just because a link was clicked. Those are the risks associated that you have to think about when you see these vulnerabilities. You take an assessment and you do nothing. Well, that's the cost of doing nothing as well. And like we said, we're protecting stakeholders. You have their business information, their personal information, your employees, your confidential information. Those are all the things that you're in the business of protecting. And so you have to make sure you understand where those vulnerabilities are, to put the proper security controls in place to protect those. And of course, this is just the first step. I know, Tom, you like to talk about that strategic approach. Think of it as asset management, risk management.
Yes, and that's an important distinction to make, because a lot of people have a tendency to think of this as an added expense. It doesn't positively affect the P&L,
Mm-hmm.
But for the very same reason you have insurance, is you're trying to plan for the worst case scenario. The good news is, by investing in cybersecurity defense, and not just cybersecurity insurance, you're hoping to prevent it. Right? You put a lock on your front door. Maybe you pay a locksmith periodically to get a new, keys and everything else for whatever reason. That hits the P&L negatively as well. What we're talking about is strategic, conscious decision to invest in the security of your business and all of the stakeholders, the people that rely on the company for their livelihood, the customers that rely on you to protect their data, whether it's a client, maybe it's law stuff, or medical records, or dental records, or medical records, same thing. They're all, this is a strategic decision. And no insurance is going to buy your reputation back. So think strategically about cybersecurity defense, but yet, it is something serious. The game has changed, and the things Davin is talking about that you need to put in place are the things that'll prevent you from being a victim.
Yeah. Well, that was perfect. Actually, Tom, talking about the things we need to put in place. Now, this is just the first step of that assessment, understanding what needs to be protected. Now, you understand your vulnerabilities. And now it's actually to do something about it, to move on to the protection stage. This is where you've already found your vulnerabilities. You know where your weak points are. Now you have to put the proper security controls in place, because like I said, cyber attacks, it's simple. Companies are going out of business because of it. So now you know your vulnerabilities, do something about it. And so like Tom was saying, to avoid a robbery, a burglary, that's a hard word to say, but you put locks on your doors. When we were worried about the place burning down, your business going out of business because of a fire, you put fire alarms, sprinklers in place. Now we have to worry about cyber attacks, and so now you put security controls in place. And there's multiple different security controls in place. We're going to talk about a few here in a little bit, but one that's one of the most essential and that every organization should have, just bare minimum, is continuous cybersecurity training. And it's maybe corny, but I like to think of it this way. So you just bought a house, you have your family with you, and I go, okay, we don't want our house to get broken into, so we're going to put locks on the doors. All right, perfect. You put your locks on their doors, but you don't tell your spouse or your child to not leave the window open at night. Well, they leave the window open at night and the house is still robbed, or something bad happens, because you can have all those security controls in place, but if training is not there, then they're basically useless, just like that lock on the door. And so that's why continuous cybersecurity training is absolutely essential. Another key piece to the protect stage is having that information security team, having an information security specialist, being able to actually manage and use and operate those security tools, because most of these security tools you can't just go buy off the shelf. And when we talk about security, that's not something that you should settle less for the cheapest one on the one on the bottom shelf. No, you should take a security first approach and only expect the best of the best security tools for your organization, for your business, for your stakeholders. And so those take an information security team to monitor, manage, and operate. And a key thing is making sure they're being used and checked and monitored every single day, and stopping threats every single day, because cyber attacks don't take a break, and neither should you or your information security team. The next stage is detect. And so you've understand your vulnerabilities, you've put the security controls in place, and now it's time to actively monitor and detect and stop those threats. And like I said, cyber threats are changing and the tools that we need are changing. And so, for example, you think of a car engine light or a gas light. And so when you're driving, you see that gas light come on and you know that you're about to be out of gas, or you see the car engine light come on and you know that's a warning to do something before a bigger problem occurs. And so with the security tools in place, you have something to detect a potential attack or an active breach that then you can stop, or you have the tools in place or the team in place to mitigate as soon as possible to prevent that bigger attack, that crisis, or that overall successful ransomware attack that's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we've relied on years and years and years. We've relied on tools like an antivirus, and simple enough, that's just not enough anymore. Antiviruses are basically useless, and I'll keep it brief, but antiviruses, the way they operate, the way they work is that they rely on virus signatures, known virus signatures that are most of the time 3 to 6 months old, because they've been known to be a virus. Now all antiviruses are looking for them, and it's just, we need something to monitor in real time, actively 24/7. And so, in most of the time, ransomware, it doesn't contain a virus or a virus signature. And so the antivirus will never see it coming. So that's why now you need an EDR, or if you have a notebook, write this down. It's an endpoint detection and response. You may see MEDR, managed endpoint detection and response, but that's a tool that monitors behavior. It doesn't rely on those virus signatures. It's looking for out of the ordinary or anomalous behavior that is, of course, correlates with a cyber attack. And we can go into depth here, and we've done a webinar about this, but to keep it brief, it is a tool that is basically the bigger and better version of antivirus, and is what everyone, at least bare minimum EDR training, that's what you need. That's the starting point, at least. But it takes care of that 24/7 monitoring, detecting and analyzing, looking for those threats. And it's extremely important, but it's one of the most important preventative measures. When we talk about cybersecurity, we're talking about preventative measures to secure your organization and make sure you have everything in place to avoid that cyber attack. And I want to touch on this, and Tom touched on it briefly when we talked about cyber insurance. So these cybersecurity tools, they are those preventative measures that are essential, because it's simple that we can't rely, and organizations can't rely on cyber insurance anymore, or at least right now, because we're seeing this a lot. And we actually even review our clients' cyber insurance policies to make sure they're compliant with whatever requirements are needed, because cyber insurance providers and policies aren't being paid out because they've lost so much money because of successful cyber attacks. And now they have these strict requirements, and a lot of the requirements are tools such as EDR, cybersecurity training, annual risk assessments, which everyone is needing. And of course, that's why we're here talking about it. But most organizations don't have that. And so when they're just relying on that cyber insurance, well, a cyber attack happens, they get hit with ransomware, they go to their cyber insurance provider, and they get hit with a hard no, simply because something has changed, or they're simply not compliant. They don't have the preventative measures needed to have that successful payout from their insurance provider, or to be compliant with their policy. Just like home insurance, you have your home insurance, but if you don't have fire alarms or sprinklers, or maybe a fence around your pool, you're not compliant and you're not going to get that payout. Same with cyber insurance. The next step is respond. So you have everything in place, but you have to have a response plan in place as well, just in case there's a crisis, you have a solution. Now, this is another essential part where the information security team comes into play, because they are going to take care of all of this. And a lot of your cyber insurance policies, they require that you have a response plan in place. Now, I want to talk briefly on communication here, the communication point here, because there's lots of new laws coming into place here recently, and you'll probably see them a lot in the next few months, requiring organizations to report that they've had a ransomware attack in a specific period of time. It could be 3 to 5 days, 7 days after the ransomware attack. But if you don't report it, of course, there's going to be consequences with that, fines, things as such. But of course, that's something that you want to be aware of and avoid. And so that's a very critical part of the response plan that a lot of people do overlook, have overlooked, or are going to overlook in the near future, that has actual legal consequences behind it. And so you need to make sure your information security team is prepared for that. And of course, here at IronTech Security, that's what we're keeping up with, all of these changes and compliances that you need. We make sure that you have them. Now, of course, when you talk about mitigation and response, timing is critical. You have to make sure that you have the proper security tools in place, partner with the InfoSec team to mitigate the potential attack or that overall problem as fast as possible, avoiding that downtime that Tom was talking about. And we're gonna get into the downtime in a little bit here in a second, but it's very important that the mitigation process is taken seriously, and that after that, improvements and adaptations to your defenses are made. And those improvements are essential to make sure the attack doesn't happen again, because we see often, if you've had some of you here may have had a ransomware attack or know someone that's had a ransomware attack or a cyber attack. And with that, they've had a successful one. Usually those cyber attackers, they create, we call them backdoors. but they have a successful attack. They move on, but they've left you can call it a back door where they know that you're an easy target. And so now they made it even easier to attack you again in the near future because they left that back door there. And with that InfoSec team, they're actively looking for those back doors, making those improvements, making sure that successful attack doesn't happen again. The last step we have here is recover. Recovery is one of the most essential pieces that you need part of your recovery planning. Now, it's essential because it must be tested and ready to go often at any time. This comes in with the 24/7 monitoring. This is what your InfoSec team is taking care of. And I want to touch right here on backups, because this is one of the most essential, critical, crucial parts of your recovery plan. And this is when we go into that business continuity and that downtime, is because backups are essential piece to make sure that downtime doesn't go from 1 week to 2 months, or doesn't go from 2 weeks to 3 months. That's what you see often, because people, they believe they have a backup. All right, it should be good. We should be able to get back up in 2 weeks. But if you have a backup in place and they're not being checked and monitored regularly, then they're basically useless. It's basically like you don't have a backup at all, because when it's time to go and that backup hasn't been checked, you're ready to roll. You've had a cyber attack, you're ready to get back up and running, and your backups are failing, or they may have been encrypted, or they may have been affected by the attack. Now you're out of luck. And so that's why it's crucial to have that InfoSec team actively monitoring and testing those backups. So testing the recovery plan, so when something does happen, you get back up as fast as possible. Because like we said, timing is critical in a cyber attack. Now, Tom, I know this business continuity, we've touched briefly on this, and we can talk about downtime and cost here. What can you add here on business continuity and the recovery process?
Yeah, right. And this is critical, and the simplest business, when you start designing and understanding exactly what this business's downtime tolerance is, that's directly related to business continuity. And there's a dollar cost to how quickly you need to be back up and running. So in the simplest terms, assign a dollar cost to what if every computer and server in your organization is shut down, okay? And now, what is the loss of productivity? What is the revenue, the loss cost, and other intangibles, anything you can think of, and assign that value. That will guide you to how much money you need to invest into business continuity. Now, the whole DR, disaster recovery, that's a different discussion, okay? That's for things like floods, and I'm not saying business continuity doesn't enter into it, but both of those, you've got data backup, you've got server backups, virtual machine virtualization, redundancy, and all of these different things. But you, as the business owner, president, managing partner, whatever that title is, assign a value to downtime.
Yeah.
For attorneys, a lot of it's going to be loss of revenue. Manufacturing, it's lots of things. Yeah. And then let that be your guide. How much does it cost to make sure we're not down more than an hour? How much does it cost to make sure that we're only down maximum 24 hours? And you already know what it's going to cost. That's your decision. That tells you exactly what you need to do from a business continuity standpoint.
No, that's exactly right. And it's funny that you brought that up, talking about law firms, CPAs, things like that. I was talking to a CPA yesterday, and we were going through the assessment, talking about different vulnerabilities. And then we got to talking about downtime, and she had just, of course, tax season over. So I know a lot of accountants are relaxing. But I was like, okay, well, during tax season, how much downtime can you afford? Like, is that something that you plan for? And the simple answer is like, no, downtime, that's not an option. my clients, stakeholders, they are relying on me to be time efficient and turn in things, meet deadlines, and downtime. That's just not an option. And so when you think about that, that's when preventative measures definitely become essential, because it's just not an option to be down. And that's the way you have to think when you talk about cybersecurity and cyber attacks, and you have to plan strategically for situations like that.
And one other thing I'd like to add to that, Davin, if you do outsource your IT, chances are you're either outsourcing it to what's known in the business as a managed services provider, which generally it's an all-in price. They proactively manage your network. They recommend, hey, the server's getting a little old. Let's replace it before it goes down. Okay,
Yeah.
You got a catastrophic server loss. But the other side of it is you pay somebody time and materials, and you only call them when something's broken.
Yep.
And that directly affects your productivity. And if you go ahead and do that calculation for how much does it cost for Susie or Bob to be down, then you may say, wait a minute, maybe we do need to proactively manage this. I'm a big believer in using an MSP. If they've got their company set up right, they are more profitable the fewer problems you have, the less you go down, because they're Johnny on the spot looking at potential things, because they have experience. This usually leads to an outage. We've got to address it right now.
Yep. Well, we've been talking about the NIST assessment. I do want to show you a brief example of what an assessment looks like. So here you see the circles. It says PRAT1 right there in the middle. And so PR, that's that protect stage that we were talking about. That's that second stage that we were talking about. And then it says AT for awareness training. I want to point out that you see the two critical areas. We'll create a scenario here. Say this is you, and you do the cyber risk assessment, and these two critical areas come up, and you understand the vulnerabilities, you understand the risk associated with it, but no actions taken. And then you're in the before stage. No actions taken. Well, it's showing these two critical areas. You're choosing not to take an action. And when you choose not to take an action, or not to change, or not to address these vulnerabilities, that simply equals a cyber attack. You will become a victim of a successful cyber attack, of a ransomware attack. But flip the scenario. It's before, now you're in after. You've gone through the risk assessment. You see these two critical areas, and we'll just strictly use the number one, PRAT. So that means all users are informed and trained. Most likely, if I asked you this and you said no, it would come up as critical. And that means that to address this vulnerability, you need cybersecurity training, or something like that. Well, you're choosing to do something about that known risk, that critical vulnerability. And in turn, you're putting security controls in place, which simply equals avoiding a cyber attack and overall keeping your doors open. So the first step out of all of this, the first step is taking a cybersecurity risk assessment, understanding your vulnerabilities, and then from that, putting the proper security controls in place, following the 5 steps, and putting your business in the best position to simply stay open, to protect those stakeholders. Now, you're taking all this information. What do you do with it? Well, speak to an InfoSec specialist. Speak to me. I'm looking forward to talking to you. You'll see the meeting.IronTech security link right there. That link will be in the chat. We can have a short 30-minute conversation. We can talk about the cybersecurity risk assessment, get you started on our cybersecurity risk assessment. We'll go through the steps that we were talking about, address all of your vulnerabilities, help you understand them, and then create a plan specific to you. Every organization is different. There's different vulnerabilities, different needs, different risks that we need to address. And so cater a specific security plan for you, and overall get your security posture to where it needs to be. You can also shoot me an email at sales.irontechsecurity.com, and feel free to give me a call, 479-397-1200. I look forward to talking to you all. We are offering a free cybersecurity and risk assessment. This is something we never do. Usually they're $700+. Of course, they go really in depth, and it's the essential first step that you need to want to address your risk and get your business to the security posture that it needs to be. Tom, do you have anything to add before we head out off of here? I know we're at about the 30-minute mark.
Yeah, I just want to point out, and we've been making a point to do this, and going back to IT versus InfoSec, it's been our experience, because we work with MSPs all over the nation, or North America, and they do an awesome job from an IT perspective. But 90% of them, and it's not just our experience, there's industry experts that understand this and have worked with MSPs in the business, our peers and other people in masterminds with us and things like that. About 90% of the outsourced IT companies really don't specialize in cybersecurity. They have a tendency to use the same old tools that they are getting better. Bitdefender has a wonderful internet protection suite, but it's not best of breed. And there's a reason why you can't get best of breed from Amazon or at Best Buy. It's because it takes skilled professionals, skilled InfoSec professionals, to configure them, monitor, and manage those. These are high-tech technical controls that only work properly with the proper policies, the proper administrative controls in place. So, if you're, I know the natural tendency is to go to your IT person, but why not just go to the people that are true experts in it? You don't go to a cardiologist for neurosurgery. Fortunately, the cardiologist knows that he's not competent in neurosurgery, but the IT industry is I'm trying to be as delicate as I can. What you want them to do is to concentrate on keeping you up and running.
Yeah.
That's their job. That positively affects your bottom line each and every single day. Security is a visionary, strategic, long-term focus. It negatively affects the bottom line unless you have an event.
Yep.
And then it's there and it's going to save your company.
Hundreds of
possibly, or even worse. Some of you may have compliance fines, lawsuits. You certainly don't want the Office of Civil Rights coming in because you've lost patient data. Yep. They fine first and then figure out what went wrong. It's not like the old days where they said, oh, let's see what went wrong and we might fine you. Nope. No. Here's your fine. And now we're going to help you fix your problems. So I just want to stress again, just go to a security specialist, not someone that just knows something about it. Go to the organizations that eat, drink, and sleep this stuff day in and day out, and understand what best of breed and technical and administrative and physical controls are. What a storyline is. That's a great defining. What's the storyline of a ransomware attack? There's 5 points to it. If they can't enumerate those 5 points, they don't really understand modern defensive cyber warfare. Yeah. And that means they're not going to know the best equipment to use in the mission, or have the best training themselves. So that's all I got to say. A little bit of soapbox there. And we love to have a little bit of fun on these smaller, or these 30-minute deeper dives. Yeah. But this is serious business, and we take it extremely serious, as do all MSSPs. A lot of times, I'm often been accused, and probably Davin has too, you get accused of, well, you're making this sound a lot worse and the risk a lot more than what it really is. No. And the simple and the simple truth of the fact is, if we told you a lot of the things that we knew, it is absolutely unbelievable. So we don't. Yeah. So just take it.
We try to make it digestible in monthly 30-minute webinars, but
well, we could spend every 30 minutes on just a horror story that is unbelievable, that no one ever hears about. It doesn't make CNN or New York Times or anything, and it's like, holy international scale.
Oh, internet. Yeah.
Nation state threat actors, NSA, U.S. Cyber Command stuff, and we don't even know the worst ones, right?
No,
We just know a lot of them.
just know what
So
we're
I think
stopping.
is there any questions in there? I see a
Yeah.
Q&A
Before
thing.
we get off here, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Once again, that meeting link is in the chat as well. You can click on that. It's really simple and easy. Schedule a short meeting whenever it's convenient for you. Like we did mention, these are every month. The last Thursday of the month, we will have another episode next month in June, and we look forward to talking to you all there. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in there. But if not, we'll hop off here in just a second.
Thanks, everybody.